It takes at least 6 weeks from the time you get your injection for the spike antibody to start to develop. So somewhere between 3 months and, quite frankly, 20 years. The immunologist that I've spoken to said over the next 10 years, we're going to see this go on in perpetuity, because it can take anywhere from 2 years to 19 years to get full-blown autoimmune disease. I think we're going to see massive injuries and a lot more deaths start somewhere between 4 and 18 months from now. Well, good afternoon, Alex, and it's nice to be back. And yes, I think we have known each other. I've been doing this for just over 20 years. It started in September of 2000. I've put well over 40,000 hours worth of research into this over the years. And most recently, in the last year, since March of last year, I've done over 400 interviews, small ones, big ones, international ones, podcasts, radio, television, just carpet bombing the world to the best that I can to tell people the problems with this entire COVID thing, between the myth of the mask, the fraud of the PCR testing, the horrors that are going to come down the road with this shot, the problems, the psychological problems with the social distancing and the non-touching. I mean, it's a really, really big problem. It's a big mess. And I do have a clinic here in Cleveland, Ohio. I've been here since 1996. I don't have clinics all over the world. I do speak all over the world back in the day when you could travel. But I just want to commend you, Alex, because I think about you often and all the years that you've had Prison Planet, and you've had, InfoWars, that everybody thought you were the conspiracy theory nut. And here we are exactly living what you've been broadcasting about for 20 plus years. Thank you for staying the course and being strong no matter what they've been trying to do to you.
Well, we'll be back at you. And that's the thing about, I'm not that old, but getting older, my memory remembers something, and sometimes it's somebody else. I know you've put on clinics, you've trained doctors, you've trained clinics. I thought you didn't have a clinic in Mexico?
I worked at a hospital in Mexico. I was the director of a medical hospital there for about a year and a half. So that's probably what you're remembering.
So my memory has it totally failed, exactly. Because we're not like the mainstream media. I'm not trying to get it wrong, but I don't use a teleprompter, so I get it quite a bit wrong. So thanks for correcting me. So we got about 5 minutes to break. There's so many areas, the cult of the mask, the medical takeover. But let's talk about front and center. Your predictions about it causing deaths, when they take it and later. It's now coming true. How did you know that? Lay it out for us.
Well, I've spent hundreds of hours plowing through the medical literature, looking at all of these things associated with this new type of shot. We can't even call it a vaccine, Alex, because it doesn't meet any of the criteria, the legal criteria of what a vaccine is supposed to do. A vaccine is supposed to keep you from getting sick. This doesn't, and in their stated literature, they say it probably won't keep you from getting sick or prevent anything. It may decrease your risk of serious infections, and it may cut down the duration of your symptoms, but it in no way says anything about keeping you from getting sick, which is what a vaccine is supposed to do. The second thing is supposed to stop the spread of infection. Well, they've already said it doesn't do that. It's not intended to decrease hospitalizations, and it's not going to lower the death rate, because the death rate is already extraordinarily low, because as you know, and I'm sure you've reported on it many times, the COVID numbers about death are absolutely fabricated, and we will never be able to sort that out and know the truth. So it's not a vaccine, and I'm encouraging everyone to understand the only reason they call it a vaccine is, number one, to get billions of dollars of funding. Number two, to get the protection of the 2005 PrEP Act as a covered countermeasure as a vaccine. And number three, we have a multi-generational indoctrinations that still, beyond all the work you've done, I've done, and others have done over the last 20 years, people still believe that vaccines are safe, thoroughly tested, which they're not. They think they're going to keep you from getting sick, which they don't. They think they're absolutely necessary, which they're not. And they don't cause any harm, which is a flat out lie. And so the vast majority of people have been multi-generationally indoctrinated to the concept of vaccine. So when they hear about the COVID vaccine, they think, oh, it's just like another flu shot. Oh, doesn't coronavirus cause the flu? So this is just like getting another flu shot. And if I can get this shot, please stop calling it a vaccine. If I can get this shot or this injection, then I can just go back to normally living life, which you won't. They told you still have to wear a mask. You still have to social distance. You still have to contact trace. It's not going to keep you from getting sick. As a matter of fact, and I know that we'll talk about this throughout the rest of the show, I have mapped out 10 10 mechanisms of injury of how when you get this injection, when you get this messenger RNA, or you get the spike protein that's already been genetically modified and made and inserted into an adenovirus for the J&J shot, when you get this spike protein antibody in your system, it will permanently and irreversibly change your immune system. And so I've mapped out 10 mechanisms of how that happens. And if I've come up with 10, there's probably more that I just haven't come across yet. Because when I first started talking about it, Alex, I said there were 4, which then went to 7, and now I've got it up to 10. And as I continue to investigate and research on the problems with this anti-spike antibody, which is the whole purpose of getting this injection, they're injecting something in you, a messenger RNA, or a piece of protein that is the spike protein. The whole purpose of having the spike protein in your circulation is to develop an antibody against that spike protein. In theory, that means the next time that you come in contact with a coronavirus, or specifically the SARS-CoV-2 virus, that antibody should block you from getting sick. Not only does it not block you from getting sick, the antibody itself is going to turn on your body and create havoc and massive autoimmune disease.
On a cytokine storm.
No, not cytokine storm. It's autoimmune disease. When the antibody itself attacks your organs by molecular mimicry, which we can talk about more as the show goes on.
We'll stay there because I'm not a doctor like you. I just read all these reports, and that's what Wolfgang Wodarg said. He said it'll cause the autoimmune disorder. It'll also cause a big allergic reaction. He just said it's a nightmare, and it doesn't even work against what they're saying. So why are they doing it? And that's the big question. We'll get into the 10 ways it hurts you, but why would they try something this bold, this crazy, and then now it's killing people and maiming them, and everybody knows people dying and getting sick? What's the master plan? And what's incredible is again, Wolfgang Wodarg heads up an EU advisory commission. The former chief scientist of Pfizer joined him on December 1st last year and tried to file a lawsuit to block authorization of the mRNA vaccines of Pfizer and others. And now major governments from Switzerland to South Africa to India are saying no to mRNA vaccines. Australia had to stop their vaccine because it had HIV positives, false positives happening. And so I'm no medical doctor. I'm just reading this. And then India says, we're not going to approve it. And then Bill Gates's NewsGuard says it's not true, even though it's on Indian TV and did happen. So there's incredible disinformation. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny has been a leading doctor, and she's not in competition. She loves the cavalry with, people like Robert Kennedy Jr. But she's been there really for 20 years because she saw this in her own clinics, saw it with her patients, saying, hey, we got a problem here. Well, this isn't traditional vaccine with all of its contaminants and problems. We know that's a real science, though. This is mRNA reprogramming people's bodies, and a protein that's in the placenta, that's in the cells, teaching the body that's bad. What could go wrong? And then here's the question I was asking, and then get back into the 10 points, Dr. Tenpenny. Why would they try something this reckless and crazy knowing it's going to cause these problems? They're not stupid. Please take over.
Well, you're right about that, Alex. These people are not stupid, and they can read the medical literature as well as I can, and as well as any other physician that has. And there's a lot of us that are now starting to speak out. A lot of us relative to the total number of physicians. We're still tiny, but there are more and more physicians who are actually reading the medical literature. Imagine that. And they're understanding the problems with this. I mean, this is a well-designed killing tool. I mean, it's not a vaccine. It's an injection or a shot. We call it a genetic modification technology. And I think it's really important for your viewers to get it straight and to get it right about how this messenger RNA works, because a lot of the mainstream press is saying, oh, you conspiracy theorists, anti-vaccine people are all saying that messenger RNA changes your DNA, and it does not. And guess what? They're right. It doesn't. Because how the process works, if you have DNA through an enzyme called reverse transcriptase, it makes a mirror copy of it called messenger RNA, which is what gets injected into your body. That messenger RNA, it goes through a system called the ribosomes and creates a protein. that protein can get reincorporated into your DNA by a process called transfection. So the messenger RNA can indirectly change your DNA, your genetics, but not directly. And I think language is important. And everything that we say gets totally scrubbed and scrutinized these days. So I think to say it accurately is important. The messenger RNA that gets injected in with this shot co-ops a little piece of machinery in your body called the ribosomes. The ribosomes, think about the messenger RNA as having a recipe in it. That's what when they say it's been encoded, think about it as having a recipe. The ribosomes read the recipe, and as it reads the recipe, it makes this protein called the spike protein. That spike protein is supposed to be the same protein that's on the surface of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and is supposed to be at least similar to the spike proteins on the circulating coronaviruses that have been out there for more than 60 years. We know that there is somewhere between 35 and 45 coronaviruses out there, individual ones. We know that 7 of them can infect humans. And so this spike protein, what it does on the surface of the virus is it acts like a key and binds to something called an ACE receptor on the surface of your cells. When that virus takes its key and binds to the ACE receptor, it opens the door and allows the virus to go in and start to replicate. So what they're trying to do is to develop an antibody to that spike protein to block the key from getting into the lock so it can't get inside the cell and start to replicate. All that sounds great. It all sounds good in theory. The problem is that when that antibody to that spike protein is made, it's an abnormal antibody. It's called a non-neutralizing antibody because the antibody is not made to the entire virus. It's made to a small little piece called a spike protein. So it doesn't behave as the same way an antibody does that is to maybe measles or chickenpox or shingles or mumps or something like that. So that antibody has a lot of characteristics with it that causes a lot of problems. The other thing about an antibody, if people listening to this, if you're just listening, you're not watching, if you're just listening, visualize in your mind that what an antibody actually looks like is a capital letter Y. A capital letter Y. The 2 upper arms of the Y are called the FAB segments, Frank Appleberry, the FAB fragments. And the stem of the letter Y is called the FAC fragment. The FAB fragment at the top is what grabs hold of viruses or particles of bacteria or things and neutralizes it and makes it go away. But in this case, it's the FAC fragment, the stem of that antibody, that causes a lot of problems. For one thing, that stem of that antibody can bind to tissue in your lungs. It can bind to eosinophils, basophils, and other types of receptors that can cause anaphylactic shock. It can cause all kinds of problems with direct modification of your macrophages. It can cross-react with human tissue and create autoimmune disorders. So this antibody is the problem. Both the FAB portion and the FAC portion, both of those individually cause a bunch of different havoc. So the problem is, Alex, is that we are injecting mRNA that has a recipe in it to build a protein to make an antibody against the protein that is supposed to keep us healthy and keep us from getting sick. But instead, what we're doing is we're creating a process that antibody replication will be there forever because of B cell sensitization. And we have no idea how long the messenger RNA continues to make it be translated and create the proteins. We have no idea how long that protein lasts in your system.
So this is mass.
Wait a minute. Wait.
Go ahead. Yes.
We have no idea how long the protein's going to last. We have no idea how long the antibody's going to be around. We have no idea how long the antibody's going to last. We don't know how long they're going to continue the B cells are going to be active. We have no idea because we have no long-term studies. And every single one of those steps makes you susceptible to illness for the entire population for an unknown period, maybe the rest of your life. That you may be susceptible to autoimmune disease, shock, allergies, and death from something that is supposed to keep you from getting sick.
You've got quite a few sites, quite a few things I've seen. Where's the best place for people to find your suppressed information that's all right out of the medical literature?
drtenpenny.com. It's dr, no period, tenpenny.com, dr10penny.com. All of our many different educational opportunities, our social media links, my podcasts, all of that stuff can all be found off of the navigation bar. Everything's now collated in one place at dr10penny.com, dr10penny.com. You can find it all.
So technically the DNA can change, but if we just say, oh, this is changing DNA, they can then technically say, oh, there's no such thing as chemtrails. Yeah, we're doing geoengineering. We don't call it chemtrails. So we call it chemtrails. They then discredit it. Same thing here. We say, oh, it's changing the DNA. No, it's telling the body to do that. So please continue, Dr. Tenpenny.
Well, I don't have time to get into all 10 of these, but there is information on some of our websites, and there's a whole bunch of material that'll be coming out within the next week. Our boot camp just launched last week, and we've got over 500 people in our boot camp, and they're going through all of this individually with us. But I want to drill down on just a couple that I think I can explain pretty quickly so people listening can get their head wrapped around it. The first one is that the coding around the mRNA. So the mRNA, actually that little strip of genetic material, is pretty unstable. So in order to get it injected into your body, they had to put a wrapping, a lipid coating around the outside of it. So think of it like they put it in a bubble. And in that coating of that bubble is something called polyethylene glycol. Polyethylene glycol, we've been sensitized to that through many, many different products that have been used since the... Well, that's one of the ingredients, but we don't generally drink antifreeze. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of other products that contain polyethylene glycol. I'm not usually a big fan of Wikipedia, but if you want to see a really down and dirty quick list of all the things that have polyethylene glycol in it, go to Wikipedia and put in polyethylene glycol. You'll be shocked, because the medical literature says that people now have allergies or sensitizations to polyethylene glycol. But since in the 1960s, it was about 2% of the population. Now it's somewhere between 70 and 72% of the population.
Wow.
And so when you get polyethylene glycol, when you're sensitive to that, that means you're allergic to it. When you inject this shot that has this polyethylene glycol on the coating on the outside of it, that is what is leading to anaphylactic reactions, shock, and death. That is the one and the primary of the 10 reasons of how this.
All right, I said I wouldn't interrupt, doctor, but I have to. I was told by high-level medical sources that this is a binary weapon, to look into it, that it causes autoimmune problems. And you just said binary weapon. If we already have this propylene glycol in us, it's in most of us, we're already allergic to us. They then inject it. That's a binary weapon, is it not?
Yeah, it's kind of like a good analogy for people to understand. It's sort of like if you were bitten by bee stings, by several bees, maybe 10 years ago, and now you've been sensitized, your immune system's been primed, and then you can get another bee sting and you go into anaphylactic shock. So it's the same thing with the polyethylene glycol, which is a chemical that is in your body. It binds to albumin or other proteins, and then you make an antibody against that. So now you're primed. And as soon as the polyethylene glycol comes in through this shot, which is in both the Moderna and the Pfizer shot, it's one of the things that can cause anaphylactic shock. And all of these things pictures we've seen on the internet of people with these rashes, these vesicles, these weepy rashes, these big reactions on their arms and things like that. It's an acute allergic reaction, most likely to the polyethylene glycol that you've been previously primed and sensitized to. The second type of the second reaction that I think is really, really important for people to understand is this whole concept of re-exposure. So when you get this, like I've already explained, you get the spike protein, you develop an antibody. It looks like the letter Y. You develop an antibody, the anti-spike antibody, when you get your shot. And these are all the people that fall into the category of, I got the shot and I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I didn't have a reaction to anything. Until they get re-exposed to a coronavirus. And it doesn't have to be the SARS-CoV-2 virus. It can be any of 37 different coronaviruses that are floating around out there in the universe.
And is that when you have the cytokine storm then?
No. That'll be the third one. I promise, Alex, I'll get to that one. So that's what happens then is when you get exposed to that, when you get re-exposed, that's when you set up the autoimmune disease. That antibody can do one of two things. It can attach to the virus, bring it inside of the neutrophils, release the virus starts to replicate and goes into massive infection, and a worse infection than you could have ever had without having the shot. That's been documented. The second, that's called antibody-dependent enhancement. And that's what happened in all of the studies that have been going on since 2005, because they've been trying to develop a coronavirus vaccine since 2005, because coronavirus flu has a big burden of illness worldwide. About 20% of influenza-like illness that happens every year is caused by coronaviruses, not influenza viruses. So as a vaccine manufacturer, there's a real need to get a coronavirus vaccine. They could never get it passed out of safety studies because all the animals that they tested this on, they tested a coronavirus vaccine on with the full virus. What ended up happening is that the animals, they tested on rats, rabbits, ferrets, hamsters, and monkeys. They all got extremely sick or they died. So the FDA would never allow them to move forward out of animal trials because they couldn't prove safety, because as soon as they got the shot, they were personally okay. Then they got re-exposed to the virus and they all got sick and died. So they failed on both safety and efficacy, because the whole purpose to get a vaccine from a pro-vaccine perspective is that when you get re-exposed, you don't get sick. They could never prove it. So they didn't have to redo the animal studies. They knew what was going to happen. And so they knew that this was the type of thing that was going to happen. So they just went right directly to human trials. So this is the key.
I want to get more into the science, but why they're going to get caught? What? This is like mass murder. This is genocide out in the open.
Pretty much. This is these people are really smart, Alex. And I've said this on a lot of the interviews I've done. I mean, they're really smart. They have all the money in the world. They have billions and trillions of dollars. That's a really good picture. I really like that graphic. It's really good. That's the spike protein that just got created. That's very good. And what actually happens is that they're really super smart. They're very smart people. And if they themselves aren't smart because they're businessmen, they can hire the best, the brightest anywhere in the world. This is a very well-designed genetic modification tool. I don't like that some people have been calling it a therapy, because calling it a therapy implies that it does something therapeutic, that it does something good for you. It's a genetic.
No, right. They're introducing
tool.
Gene rewriting. They're just introducing a genetic takeover to us like it's no big deal.
One of the other things that spike protein does is it can that and the antibody can cross the blood-brain barrier, and it can convert two proteins in the brain and make those two proteins in the brain malfunction. When those proteins in the brain, and they have really long names, I'm not going to repeat them, just say the two proteins in your brain get corrupted. One can lead to ALS, and the corruption of the other one is frontal temporal lobe degeneration.
Alzheimer's.
Yes, and and dementia.
All right, stay there. Final segment, if you can go.
Well, I'll finish up on the science of what I want to say about it today for the sake of time, because I want to address your issue that you've mentioned several times about cytokine storm, because that does happen, but not because of the antibody enhancement that we've been talking about for the first part of the show. One of the things that this antibody does, well, let me back up one step. The type of white blood cells that fight infection in your body, actually in your tissues, are called macrophages. Macrophages are kind of like little Pac-Men. They're little garbage eaters. So when you've had, like, say, pneumonia, or you have an infection, say, in your hand, you have a deep cut and it's getting all pussy, it's the macrophages that are doing that work. There's two types of macrophages, and interestingly enough, they're called macrophage type 1 and type 2. Macrophage type 1 is when you initially get an infection, when you start to get sick. your body calls a bunch of macrophage type 1s to that infection, to that pathogen, and the macrophage type 1 starts to release cytokines, because that's what they're supposed to do. The cytokines are pro-inflammatory, they cause a fever, they call in a bunch like natural killer cells. So the macrophage type 1s, that's what you want them to do, is they're there to fight off the infection. But as the infection starts to resolve and starts to go away, the macrophage types 2s come in, and they're like the firemen. They come into the fire hydrant and they put water on all of those hot cytokines, calm down that whole inflammatory process, and then they start to clean up the cellular debris and the mess. So the type 1 macrophages increase cytokines, which is what you want early in an infection, and type 2 macrophages come in kind of after the fact and kind of calm things down. But what this antibody does to the type 2 macrophages is it kills them. The FAC fragment of that antibody attaches specifically to receptors on type 2 macrophages, so the firemen never show up. And the cytokine storm goes on and on and on, and the fire.
So there's no off switch. There's no off switch.
There's no off switch. So that's where I've come up with this expression saying that there's an on switch, but no off switch. And that's how the cytokine storm happens, because we kill off that antibody that's supposed to protect you, attaches to the M2 macrophages and makes them and inactivates them. They can't migrate into the area where they need to be. And so the M1 macrophages continue to create cytokines, storm, fever.
And they all know this.
It's
in the literature. It's not just you saying it. It's top scientists.
Yeah, and the third thing is the new J&J shot, which we have very little information on, is what it does is it bypasses that manufacturing process of the messenger RNA, creates a spike protein. It takes the spike protein and puts it inside of an adenovirus, which is a common cold virus, which then can bind to your cell and open up and deposit the spike protein antibody inside of your cell. So the end result. So
does that get into your DNA? Does that get into your DNA?
Yes, because it's the protein that's injected directly into your system. The delivery mechanism is different. On the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine shots, the Pfizer and the Moderna shots, they inject the messenger RNA that makes the protein. The J&J shot has the protein already embedded inside of an adenovirus, which binds to your cells and deposits the protein into your body, where you start to make the antibody. So the end
take your
result
time and talk about that. Explain that. That's a big deal.
Well, the end result is that all three of these shots end up putting spike protein antigens into your system that you make these antibodies for that we've been talking about that are going to be so destructive. In fact, Alex, there was a study that came out from a very well-known immunologist. I've known the lead researcher on that for more than 20 years. And what they did was they say, well, once we've got this antibody to the spike protein, does that antibody cross-react with other tissues? They tested 55 different tissue types, and what they found was that antibody cross-reacts with, I believe, 28 of them. And so that means that there's 28 different organs in your body that can be attacked by that antibody. That's why if you have 100 people standing in front of you that all got the shot, you could have 100 different sets of symptoms. It all depends on where that antibody attaches you. This is a very well-designed killing tool.
And then it's perfect to cover up. It's perfect to cover up because there's a bunch of different ways people are dying.
Exactly. Wow. And the adenoviruses have in some papers have shown that adenoviruses themselves, there's more than 100 different strains, but that some of the adenoviruses that when they get into your system, they can turn on oncogenes. They can turn on genes that can cause cancer. In fact, I was reading a paper yesterday that said in the body of the paper, it said, we do not understand why more people haven't paid attention to the fact that adenoviruses can be oncogenic, meaning cancer causing. And so they've known this. And so, I mean, Alex, think about this. I mean, I'm an integrative medicine physician in Cleveland, Ohio. I've been studying problems with vaccines for a little over 20 years. I've read thousands of papers, literally, and I've dug all of this stuff out of peer-reviewed mainstream medical literatures. It did not come from conspiratology.com. If I can read it, they can read it. They've got access. They've got teams of people that could be reading 10 times more articles than I can. And so if I can come up with 10 mechanisms of injury for this shot and this spike protein, there's probably more. That's just as many as I've been able to find so far. And they know all of this. They know this. They're smart people. So
and that's my final question. The bigger picture is Bill Gates says, I want to depopulate you, and then he's behind this, and it kills people. My God, this is just open mass murder happening.
It pretty much is. I mean, we've seen so many reports now of thousands of people. You know, VAERS, as of February the 18th, the VAERS report has over 1,000 reported deaths. We know that that's about 10% of reports. So add 2 zeros to that. It could be anywhere from 10,000 to 100,000 deaths. We've had over 19,000 reported adverse events. Add a 0 or 2 behind that. It could be anywhere from 190,000 to 1.9 million adverse events. And that's as of February the 18th. We started this on December the 10th. So in a little over 2 months, we have documented evidence of reports of people that have died. That may be tens of thousands of more people. We know what's happening all over Europe. We know the lawsuits that are being filed to try to stop this. And quite frankly, Alex, the FDA and the CDC have violated 3 areas of federal law to be able to authorize this emergency use of this shot at all. First of all, there are other therapies that can be used to treat this infection. Ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, high-dose vitamin C, zinc, D, all of those things can treat it and prevent it. The second thing is, in order to get an emergency use authorization, the product that you're giving emergency use to without any studies or long-term studies at all has to be safer and less deadly than the infection itself. We know that
this isn't even tested.
And the survival rate on this virus is 99.91%. You got
we only have 1 minute left. Only 1 minute left. DrTimPenny.com. Let me just ask this really quickly. You said on other shows you did that the deaths early on are one thing. You expect a lot of massive death later. What's the time frame on that from your study, just in 30 seconds?
It takes at least 6 weeks from the time you get your injection for the spike antibody to start to develop. So somewhere between 3 months and, quite frankly, 20 years. The immunologist that I've spoken to said over the next 10 years, we're going to see this go on in perpetuity because it can take anywhere from 2 years to 19 years to get full-blown autoimmune disease. I think we're going to see massive injuries and a lot more deaths start somewhere between 4 and 18 months from now.
Incredible. Dr. Sherry Tenpenny, DrTimPenny.com. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for the truth, and God bless you. Look forward to speaking to you more in the future. I hope folks will take this interview once it's archived at man.video and share it. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you so much, Alex.
What an amazing lady. That's the truth, folks. You just heard it. We'll be right back.